Hi, I'm Ian Whittaker, City Analyst and host of the JCDecaux Digital Changemakers podcast. The podcast that showcases industry research and insights to inspire senior marketers to push the boundaries on their marketing strategies and become change agents in their organization. Hewlett-Packard co-founder David Packard once said, "Marketing is too important to be left to the marketing department." HP championed the importance of marketing for the entire business because marketing represents the customer, and ultimately the customer is the end goal for all business. Therefore, directors and board members need to be familiar with the central concepts of strategic marketing if they value the customer as the ultimate stakeholder in the business process. Today, we're discussing the tactics marketers can use to challenge the oversimplified rhetoric that marketing can be done by anyone and prove the value of marketing and advertising for the business. Especially helpful when budgets are under pressure in today's economy. Today's expert guest is Mai Fenton, CMO at Superscript, a marketer all too familiar with the Boardroom. Mai has been named CMO to Watch, Revenue Marketing One to Watch, and a top 30 most influential fintech marketers. Mai's background, working for many years alongside CFOs and finance directors in operational roles, brings us back to conversations around speaking the language of the CFO and ensuring that marketers are able to prove the value of advertising as an investment into the long-term health of your business. Let's put the topic to task in today's episode. Mai, pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for coming on and for taking the time. It's absolutely great.
Thanks so much for having me, Ian.
Not at all. Why don't we start off, just for the benefit of viewers at home, as it were, sort of your background, sort of the angle where you've come from, and some of the things that you've done in your career.
Yeah, well, Ian, I've been a marketer for nearly 25 years now. Mm-hmm. So I guess if I was to summarize my 2 decades in marketing in terms of my career in one word, it would probably be diversified. Mm-hmm. I've managed my career to develop quite a diversified background in terms of sectors, in terms of marketing discipline. And it sounds a little bit like I'm talking about asset management, but it does, to me, it does feel like portfolio management, to be honest. Yeah. In the way that you kind of, you diversify your portfolio to not be, to rely on a particular asset, to manage your risk, your reward, and volatility, etc. So I did the same. With my career, I started in consumer packaged goods. I moved into bricks and mortar retail and e-commerce and digital marketplaces, even fashion. Oh, wow. And now technology startups and scale-ups. But I've also diversified in terms of the marketing disciplines. And that has helped me as well, I think, in my career because. There was I don't know if you remember, there was a time where it was all about brand marketing and big advertising. And that's when I was in CPGs and retail. And then it became all about performance marketing and digital marketing. And I made the move into digital startups and scale-ups as well. And now actually with digital media inflation, the deprecation of third-party cookies, people are realizing the value of brand again, and the two of them combined, brand and performance. And it's great because through my career I've developed an expertise in both in a way, and kind of many more disciplines within. From PR to CRM to digital media and Google Ads, etc. So diversification. And I don't know if you read the book Range from David Epstein.
Yes.
So where he uses stories and research studies to demonstrate that range is as important as early specializations. And I kind of see myself as I've adopted more of a Roger Federer path, I guess, where, he kind of, he dabbed into all sorts of sports before he focused on tennis, as opposed to a Tiger Woods whose dad was training him to play golf from the age of 2. I was more of a Roger Federer, and I've dabbed into a lot of things. I've sampled, various specialisms, and I grew my career that way. I definitely think it served me well, and in today's environments, which is quite complex as well, having that breadth and depth of experience is helping me, at the leadership table, dealing with colleagues across, various areas of business. And it's a bit like combining vertical and lateral thinking, to really enhance your creativities and helping me think outside the box. And then the second aspect of your question was around the sort of senior leadership experience. And I realized I spent over half of my career as the most senior marketer either within the division of a group or within the company. And what's been great is that that's allowed me to spend a lot of time at the leadership table and have all these strategic conversations with leaders across finance and sales, MDs and CFOs and CEOs and so on. And there again, I really think that my diverse experience and the range I've developed has helped me having really constructive conversations at that level.
I mean, that is sort of quite an impressive sort of background, and as you say, range of experiences that you've had. I mean, I have to admit, I'm sort of more in your camp, sort of I do a mixture of things. I sort of finance, I come from a history background, sort of mentioned before, sort of I'm doing a master's in war studies. It is true. You can learn so many different concepts and then bring them into different aspects of the role. I guess in your time that you spent in sort of marketing as a whole in those different sort of areas, what have you learned about where marketing fits into the overall business and for companies? Because, this is a topic that comes up time and time again. And there are various sort of debates. Yeah. We obviously will have our views and so forth. But how have you found that?
Well, let me start first with that quote that you used in your introduction, which I actually really like that quote from the co-founder of HP. Marketing is too important to be left to the marketing department. And it does sound quite provocative, undermining for a marketer if you take it as face value. But I absolutely agree with it. I think, marketing is everyone's business, within the company. When a company is established its purpose and is really clear about what it exists, I think you absolutely need to get everyone in the business engaged at every touch point, because everyone has something to do with the brand or how the brand is projected. And it's not just the marketing team or the customer-facing teams like sales or customer success. It's it's your product team, right? Because you can only market a product that is strong enough or differentiated. It's the tech team that support the build and the flawless experience. It's even the finance team, like accounts payable, accounts receivable, how they deal with clients and suppliers. And it's in fact every single employee who might be talking about what it's like to working at your company, because ultimately what people think about your brand is your company makes your brand, or influence your brand. So I think this is why I think that quote is really, really important. It's true. Every employee has a role to play from a marketing standpoint. That said, there are certain aspects of marketing that I think should be left to the marketing department. Once you've got the purpose built and when everybody around the business is aligned, that marketing does play a big part in building that brand and activating it. So certain disciplines of marketing have to be left to the marketing department because they require either a creative expertise, creative advertising development, or data or tech expertise. Better utilizing, the ad platforms or the tech stack that you need for acquisition and retention, etc. It's quite specialist. Yeah. This is where you need certain talent within the marketing team to deliver that. But that would be my first point. And in terms of the overall business strategy, why I see my role as very important is championing the customer as well. So, I always make sure that the customer has a seat at the leadership table. I need to come to leadership discussions with a customer insight that informs the right decision making. And sometimes we can be blinded by numbers, right? We think that what works on a spreadsheet is going to work in the real world. But everybody around the leadership tables needs to see things through a customer lens, and it's really the role of the CMO to make sure that this is constantly happening. And also balancing the long term and the short term. Yeah. If you're the CFO and you've got some targets to meet, or you look at things from a quarterly basis, some decisions can be made that have a positive impact in the short term, but can be damaging in the long term, right, for the brand and the business. So I think, again, this is where marketing also fits at the board and leadership table.
And it is quite interesting because, there's a quote. I mean, there's a famous quote when it comes to the sort of the war sort of angle, which is say that war is too important to be left to the generals. And it seems like it's a similar sort of analogy here with what you just said in terms of the David Packard quote. Yeah. and also as well in terms of the marketing department, that essentially there's the overall policy sort of the firm, where it wants to get to, sort of what it wants to do, and so forth. But when it really comes down to the technical details, boards really shouldn't be getting involved in that. That's really sort of the role of the marketing department. But at the same time, the two sides really need to be aligned on knowing what exactly is the overall policy and how they can actually get that, which is the role of the marketing department to come in.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the themes that we've talked about a lot on this podcast is, in the podcast series, is about the whole idea of advertising as intangible CapEx. And this is something that originally actually started off, so the view was how to explain advertising as a concept to boards so they could understand it. But increasingly, sort of my view is that actually it's not just a communication method to boards. It's actually really should be part of their strategic thinking, that this is more of a sort of, from a board level, really need to see sort of advertising as really investment that drives the long-term future of the firm. I just wondered, sort of in your experiences, first of all, your views on that anyway, and in terms of the analogy, and you may have different views sort of on it as well. Yeah. And also as well, whether during your experience, whether you've actually seen that come through in terms of what boards actually do.
Yeah, so first part of your question, I really, really love that analogy, and it's a bit of a shame that brand advertising is not considered as CapEx, considering the long-term effects that it has, right? So it's an issue of accounting practices that I don't think we'll be able to resolve very quickly, but it's certainly something that I agree with. That I spend quite a lot of time sort of educating, my CFO and the leadership team about. And I'm really lucky in my current role to be in a position where there's a really good understanding and buying into this through different sort of ways of data modeling and assessments, not NPV as such, which it would be amazing if we could come with a formula to demonstrate the true impact over the long term of brand advertising. But we find other ways to assess through various methods of testing and modeling the impact of brand advertising in the long term. So unfortunately, on the balance sheet, it's not quite what it should be. Also, I do encounter the issues more in kind of the short-term P&L level, the capital expenditure, exposure of brand advertising, which is tricky, right? It would be accounted for in the month that it's occurred, even if the impacts can be years, right? Cumulative years. Afterwards, but so this is really unfortunate that from a P&L perspective, it's not showcasing it well, but you need to do the work around, in terms of educating the business so that they don't take these sort of numbers that are just pure face value.
And it is true about. We had this on a similar topic around the accounting treatment with Sam Tomlinson at PwC, and this is exactly this guy. And I know from an analyst standpoint, sort of having seen companies under so much shareholder pressure and short-term shareholder pressure to really deliver on numbers, and unfortunately, marketing is a very sort of easy way to try and meet your bottom line numbers. And
absolutely, and it's really tricky. So when I'm about to have a big sort of advertising campaign going out. Our financial year ends 30th of June. This is really, from a timing perspective, is not going to look good, right? On this year's or this month's P&L. But that's why all these other conversations around absolutely need to happen. And interestingly, with my CFO, we have spoken about the concept of net present value as well of advertising investments. So that's why I really love this concept that you're sort of really, really pushing, because it resonates a lot with me. Yes, you can do other forms of ROI assessment for direct response media, like performance media. Fine, we actually report a lot on measures like payback, ROI, or ROAS for performance media. I'm not comfortable doing this for brand at all.
No, I'd agree. I mean, my view has always been that essentially what you should have is you should have two forms, almost as well you have two valuation metrics. I think for direct response, ROI, that makes sense. Yeah, it totally does make sense. But for something such as brand advertising, which has really built up the long-term value of the firm, ROI is a terrible metric. You know, as an analyst, for value and long-term value of a firm, you would just never use it, or very, very rarely, just because it's got so many shortcomings when it comes to that long-term value. But I suspect this is very much, as you say, going to be an education process. I want to come back. I mean, sort of want to talk in a moment just about the sort of one of your points where you talked about communication to the sort of CFO and explaining the concepts. Because I think for many people who are listening to this podcast, that will be an important topic. But I just want to come back to before that, sort of one or two other things. And I think one is what you just said about sort of the inputs that go into models. Because, again, this is something that people sort of I would say 90% plus of people, when they take take a model, what they instinctively look to is the outputs. And essentially sort of always say, well, actually the key thing that needs to you look at and focus on are the inputs and the assumptions that are made. How do you, in your role, sort of try and maximize sort of making sure that those inputs are as good as possible? And I'll give you, one thing to say on here. I mean, like I said, my background is I was an equities analyst. You would get a company with the same sort of historic numbers, give the same sort of guidance, and you would get 20 to 25 different set of estimates from different analysts, depending on their point of view. And what it really came down to is people looking at the assumptions that each person had made. And that's really where they're focused on. So I'm just interested in your experience when you do that, and any sort of suggestions you have for people out there.
Yeah, it is difficult. It's very challenging. And also I work for a challenger brand as well, but because we haven't been around a huge amount of time, it's not like we've got a lot of history and historical data. So obviously we look at sort of peer as well, assessment. If I think about NPV, for example, what is a discount rate? What would be a good input, right? Is it similar challenger brand of a similar size? Where do you find them? Is it about where else that investment could be going and what return would you expect? And so I think there's it's more of a conversation, but we're a small team as well. So we won't have like a huge number of equity analysts to put forward their assumptions. But it's a good conversations to have with data team. We've got amazing data scientists as well at the Superscript, which build amazing models, and with a finance team, utilizing, I don't mind looking at sort of public data as well and experimental research or econometric models from other businesses to give me a bit of guidance in making the right assumptions. But it is a mix, really. I don't think I've really cracked the right formula. But as much sort of data and insight as possible, and not just purely based on your own data, and looking around at peers as well would be my recommendation, really.
And it's quite funny from the financial markets. So of coming at from that angle, and this is a market where obviously people are making literally billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar bets. The overall view is valuation is an art, not a science. That essentially it is not so much. There is no empirical formula that means that this is X as amount, X equals Y. So on here, what it's really about is coming to a set of assumptions and conclusions that are rational, logical, can be defended. Sort of and make sense, and also as well, I think constantly tweaking over time.
This is so much better than I did.
No. But this is the other thing as well that essentially that I think there's an assumption that, as it were, that the sort of the models are set in stone, where actually what they require is sort of constant updating, and constant going back and looking at things. I think the other thing that's quite interesting at the sort of that you have at the moment as well, if you look from the outside on the advertising world, and again, be very interested in your thoughts and experiences of this, is it seems very much the advertising world is caught in this sort of what is called the quantification fallacy. Or actually sort of, again, go back to the war analogy, the McNamara fallacy after a former defense secretary in the US. This whole idea that what happens is that people only see what they can measure as important, and anything that can't be measured essentially is viewed as not important, and therefore not to be looked at. And that the numbers set the numbers become a sort of proxy for the overall strategy. Is that something you see in sort of a lot of in marketing today, or? Yeah,
I mean, but it really reminds me of the days that everything went digital, performance media, and I think it's because it was measurable and attributable and measurable. So suddenly, you had all of your, CFOs, leadership people wanting to just focus on that. There's companies that completely relied on performance media really to grow to an extent. Obviously, there's obvious limitations, and I think it's because of that. It's because we've got the data. We can attribute it, we can measure it. It's much more difficult to measure other forms of media performance, such as out of home, for example. Although it's more digital now, it's more programmatic, so that's really changing. So I think again, this is what my role is as a CMO is to guard us against that data fallacy. Every business needs some data to report back to investors, and there's always naturally a tendency to rely a bit too much on that. So as a CMO, I need to make sure that everyone's got a good broad view of the business, understands the data, and if I talk about marketing channel performance, obviously understands how channel performance is measured, but also how they work together. There's always a tendency from board people to look at channels in silos, and there's always certain people have a certain preference for a channel, and so I need to make sure they understand it does not work like that. And we actually conducted a very good piece of research with JCDecaux, a control versus expose research that was looking at the performance of out-of-home exposure versus social advertising exposure, and the two combined versus nothing. And it's amazing to see that the power of combining your public screen out of home, your private screen social media mobile advertising really enhanced our, whether it's brand health measures, brand perceptions, but also intent measures like action by 2-3x. And that's something that often people don't understand. They would read your Google Ads report. This is the CPC, this is CTR, this is the conversion, this is it. But I think removing those channel silos again is I've kind of moved on to another topic now. I can see. But I feel quite passionate about it.
No. It's totally great. I mean, they are becoming obsolete. The whole idea that you have, as it were, analog and digital media. Outdoor is increasingly becoming digital. Publishing already, majority is. TV is moving in that direction. People are using programmatic. Sort of absolutely true. Let's go back to the topic in terms of speaking the language of the CFO. Of which it sounds as though of you're extremely good at. We're
trying to be.
No. From things, it sounds though in terms of the things of with your CFO.
I think you need to have really good financial awareness. You cannot have a credible relationship with your CFO if you don't understand the fundamentals of finance from a not just P&L cash flow point of view, but also a balance sheet point of view. Going back to the capex conversations and being able to use these analogies when you talk to your CFO is okay. We know it's not a capital expenditure, but was it treated as a physical asset or similar kind of capital investment? This is the value that you would get from your brand advertising. Is massively important. It gives you that credibility and also speaking their language. What would matter to my CFO is how are we creating shareholder value? So I need to be able to demonstrate how marketing is driving revenue growth, is how this particular activity will improve our operating margin, or how I'm making more efficient use of that capital. And that really, really resonates. And, ultimately, you mentioned valuation. We are a VC-backed business. Valuation is really important for us. So beyond, and because we are a digital service business, it's not like we've got lots of physical assets. So what, IP, technology, engineering talent, and the brand become really important conversations, in terms of, what will guide our valuation, future valuations.
And as you say, I mean, it's linking it in to those topics. I think that's part of the problem. Sort of often, I think you hit the nail on the head there. But if you don't have, as it were, the basics, the basics of financial angle, and also as well knowing what the priorities are of the managements and the shareholders, that can make it a lot more difficult.
Yeah, but I think marketing's really evolved from when I started, from the brand comms department or coloring department, which to really being a revenue and profit generator. I mean, certainly in my role, that's the way. This is why the marketing department exists, is to help the business grow and drive more revenue and more profit as well. It's not just about putting out some lovely posters and, and a lovely website, all with the customer in mind and with some really, really strong financial awareness. And I do really feel like I have an obligation to demonstrate the value of every investment I make in marketing. And I use the word investment for a reason, because I always avoid talking about marketing spend or marketing costs. It's little things, but using the word cost or spend in a conversation with your CFO and your board is not really helping the cause, but always using investment, because it is. It could be a short-term investment in the case of performance media, or it could be a long-term investment.
And funny enough, I think that by itself, that don't talk about marketing, talk it as an investment. That is an extremely good tip for anyone listening to this to take away. However, I'm going to ask you for another one. If there's one, I know, it's terrible. If there's another sort of good tip that you would give to people who are working in marketing today, whether at any level within the organization, what would you say?
In fact, we've covered some of them. So there's obviously the customer, always stay focused on the customer and the customer value creation. Develop really good financial awareness. I cannot stress how important that is. So that is probably as important as customer focus. And this is, you need to ensure that the whole business is not just purely driven by data and metrics. And this is why you, as the marketer, the brand guardian in the way, the customer champion, you need to make sure that you bring these two to the table and balance out the data, the numbers, with the rest and the bigger picture, for want of a better word.
Well, I'd agree with that. Mai, that's been superb. Absolutely fantastic. Thanks so much for coming on. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
No, not really at all. It's been great. No, thanks so much. Mai, thank you so much for chatting with us today. It was a pleasure as always. If there's anything you'd like to ask us or hear more about, you can find us on LinkedIn or check out the Digital Changemakers Hub. We hope you enjoyed listening. And wherever you get your podcasts, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share.